So you're thinking of planning an Interrail trip. This talk is a follow-up from one I gave in 2022. We'll look at how ChatGPT may help the planning processes. Now back in 2022 I went through a fairly standard process for planning, identifying the high level thoughts on what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, and then started on the detailed advanced planning, the dates, the places, the estimates of costs and the like, things I book in advance, and then have some flexibility from when I learned that you needed maybe to have some extra time and have rest days and the like. Now I joined a number of Facebook groups, which was very, very helpful, and people did have problems, and so that community was very helpful for people who said I've had to admit defeat, and other people saying the same thing but given advice on how you could overcome those doubts and concerns. So I came up with this formula for success: the Interrail plus the planning plus having some flexibility, but also the importance of the community could provide a great holiday and some great experiences. And since that first trip I've had quite a number of Interrail trips since then, a total of 18 weeks away, and there's a link to a video about the planning processes that I made in 2022, but now I'm doing things differently. So here's a ChatGPT prompt. So this is the one which explains how it works. This is a useful overview, but also the mistakes, some of the things I didn't know back then about the importance of booking early. My first trip was delayed for 2 weeks because I couldn't get a Eurostar reservation. So it can also be useful in estimating cost. So I recently went on a trip to Spain, but if I was doing this in October, this is the type of question that I would ask. I might initially be interested in the costs. So here's a question which says I'm going on these particular routes. Give me an estimate of the reservation costs, the internet rail pass, and compare that with the cost of doing it on the spec, just without an Interrail pass. So it came up with the costs and the overall costs, and compared that with getting the tickets on the date, and it also gives some suggestions on how to minimise those costs. We know these type of things about travelling on off-peak hours, and came up with the conclusions. And also, usefully, you'll notice that ChatGPT did say, and here are some ways you can get more details and click on the sources, the useful sources of information. Another ChatGPT prompt. I would have loved this after my first trip to Scandinavia and my second trip to Spain. What are the differences? Because I thought I knew how Interrail worked and how reservations worked, but travelling in Spain is quite different. You couldn't easily book reservations online. You had to get them at the train stations. So this was a very useful prompt before a potential second trip. So this is using ChatGPT. I find it very useful. I should say I'm using a licensed version because I do find it very, very useful. But you may have some concerns about the system, about its limitations, and wonder how you could use it effectively. Now, you could ask ChatGPT, what's the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And that is a poor question to ask. ChatGPT advises you to ensure your question, your prompt are clear, specific, and give the context for the ChatGPT model to understand what you're asking. So it can be useful to learn about the frameworks for ChatGPT prompts. There's a whole set of frameworks. There's an APE1, you define an action, the purpose, and the execution. Here's another quotation from the Hitchhiker's Guide. everything that is in the world when you're born is just normal. For me, it was just the radio. Everything was invented between 15 and 35 as new and excited and revolutionary. And that, for me, was the web. I discovered the web probably in my 30s and got a job out of it. And everything invented after 35, the quote, but maybe 55, is against the natural order of things. And if you're of that age, that may be what you're thinking about the whole notion of artificial intelligence. You might think it's evil, it's the downfall of civilization. You might think it's inaccurate. You've heard quotes about 50% of the answers are wrong. But you might think it's useful, but what about privacy, environmental and other ethical issues? Or maybe you're just saying, well, I don't know how to use it effectively. Oh, answer's only 50% correct. Well, maybe that's because a poor prompt is given. And in fact, many universities are worried that ChatGPT is so good that the essays are better than average. So here was this question about how Interrail works, and I asked it to redo it as an essay, and that is perfectly fine article. This would be potentially published in a local newspaper which had an article about Interrail. Grammar's fine, and I've read it, and yes, it's really, really good. Don't believe everything on ChatGPT. Well, of course, don't believe everything on the internet. There are lies and errors and the like. So, does it seem reasonable, and cite the sources? And you can also ask ChatGPT. You might be worried about the things that you're disclosing to it. So ask ChatGPT about how you keep things secret from it. And is there a private mode? Yes, there is. What about environmental concerns? Yes, there are environmental impacts of AI, and you can ask ChatGPT about it, but also about other cloud services. So here's a question. I'm intending to use Google, Facebook and ChatGPT for an hour a day for planning my Interrail holiday. What are the environmental impacts? Cite sources. Cite sources can be very, very important. So here it is. Here's a summary. Yes, they all have environmental issues. ChatGPT is more than others, but Facebook, yeah, I actually use Facebook more than I use ChatGPT. So maybe that's the biggest one in terms of CO2 emissions, but in water usage, it does seem to be a big issue. And how are these things being addressed? Well, let's look at the sources. Here was an interesting one, the carbon footprint of a Google search back in 2009. The reason it's gone down is they've had about 15-16 years to address those things. But what about ChatGPT? What is being done to minimise? There are things being done to minimise, and here are the sources. So if you have a particular interest in this, follow up those sources. So to conclude, you're thinking of interrailing. If you've never done it before, that shows that you're willing to try new things. And if you're like me, getting on a bit, you'll probably get tired after a while and start making mistakes. So I'd say you can use ChatGPT, it can help you. It's important to learn how to use it effectively. And feel free to share your thoughts and experiences, and to be part of that community which is using technology to support Interrail travel. And here is a publication which you might find useful. I'm currently going through 132 pages. It's got on how to use ChatGPT effectively.